Welcome everyone. This is the 5th video in our course, International Marketing Management. We continue to work through our onion framework. So far, we've peeled away the layers of market and organization. In market, we talked about the market opportunity matrix and how to assess the attractiveness of a market using sizing and scoping. In the layer on organization, we studied the characteristics that allow us to identify which of our skills are core competencies and how those core competencies can create a strategic fit that allows us to meet the needs of the target audience. In this next layer, we are talking about strategy. Our primary objective in this section of the course is to define go-to-market strategies. We'll do that by using the Strategic Quadrants framework. And you'll learn how to define an industry and to define what a customer is in ways that allow you to create the Strategic Quadrants framework. When it comes to marketing strategy, there are several models that can help us make different types of marketing strategy decisions. I've listed some of them on the slide. They include the SWOT analysis, Porter's strategic marketing options, Miles and Snow's strategic marketing types of organizations, the BCG matrix, and marketing warfare. Briefly, I'm going to go through these. You already know what the SWOT analysis is. We covered that on Friday, and you have the SWOT analysis template that I provided to you as a PDF. You are probably familiar with Porter's 5 Forces model, but that model goes along with the material that we covered on Friday. It helps us to identify opportunities and threats in the environment. Porter also wrote about types of marketing strategies that organizations could pursue, and he identified 3 basic types. One is differentiation, another is cost leadership, and a third is to concentrate on focal points, or what we can call a niche marketing strategy. So again, those are differentiation, cost leadership, or niche strategies. Miles and Snow addressed marketing strategy by identifying the 4 types of organizations based on how they approach strategy. The 4 types are prospector, defender, analyzer, and reactor. There's no one better strategy as long as your organization is not a reactor. Reactor organizations have no clear strategy. They tend to exist in any type of environment, but they're always reacting to what's happening. So rather than pursuing an intended strategy, they always end up reacting to something that's happened, possibly reacting to what the competition has done. So don't be a reactor, but the other 3 types are prospector, defender, and analyzer. The differences in these types are based on whether the environment is stable or dynamic, and whether their strategy is based on protecting their turf, maintaining their current market status, or truly innovating. So prospectors are the companies that focus on developing new products, new innovations, creating product development strategies, and possibly even diversification strategies, and doing so in very dynamic environments. The BCG matrix, also known as the Boston Consulting Group matrix, because that's the organization that created it, helps marketing strategists to understand where they can get financial resources to support products in their product portfolio and how to decide which products should be supported and which products should be divested. The BCG matrix is based on 2 variables. The first variable is the business growth rate. The second variable is the relative market share position of that specific organization's product. So the business growth rate refers to the industry as a whole, and the market share variable refers specifically to the organization in question. If the organization has a low market share and the growth rate for that industry is also low, we would call that product a dog, and we would say that we should liquidate it. In other words, we should not continue to invest resources in building that particular business, but instead should divest that business so that we can use those resources in other areas. If the market share is low, but the growth rate is high, we would call that business a question mark. This means that it could be a successful business, but it depends upon what happens and how well we are able to invest and plan our strategy. We could take resources that we saved from liquidating dogs and invest them in question marks, which might allow us to turn those question marks into stars. If we're not willing to invest in that particular business, then we should divest, just as we did with the dogs, so that we can concentrate our resources in areas that we're committed to having as key performance areas. If the growth rate is high and our market share is high, then that's a wonderful situation. We would call that product area a star. Now, even though we would be very excited to have stars, stars still require investments because they are growing rapidly and it's an area that will have a lot of competition. We need to be prepared to invest our resources in protecting our star and growing our star. And product areas that have a low growth rate but a high market share, the products are considered cash cows. That means that we don't need to continue to invest in those products, but instead we can enjoy the fruits of our labor. We can take the revenues from those very profitable cash cow products and use them to invest in our stars and to invest in our question marks. So again, you can see that the BCG matrix is very good for identifying what products should stay in our portfolio, which ones should be divested, and how we should apply our financial resources. The last marketing strategy model that I want to point out to you is one called marketing warfare. And you can see the basic categories of marketing strategies that are provided in the graphic in the slide. Marketing warfare is described in a book by the same name, and it is based on the strategies of war that are written about by Sun Tzu in the book The Art of War. For this section of our class, I want us to focus on go-to-market strategies. Even though there are so many different marketing strategy models, we are going to focus on the Strategic Quadrants framework. The Strategic Quadrants framework allows us to identify 4 go-to-market strategies. Keep in mind that a strategy is different from tactics. First, we'll begin by identifying our strategy, and then later, once we know how we're going to go to market, we will identify what tactics we're going to go to market with. So just as an orchestra is different from its individual instruments, a strategy is different from its tactics. The strategy will specify how we're going to use our core competencies to have a strategic fit with our customers and how we will develop our competitive advantage. The strategy will help us to deliver our value proposition to our target audience, and it'll be the way that we interface with our customers. We can say it's the how of marketing, the going to market. So what does it mean to have a go-to-market strategy? Well, a strategy allows us to account for competition. It also ensures that we are thinking about who our customers are and what our marketing objectives are. The other strategic models that I told you about are sound but provide little guidance for actually telling us how to go to market or how to ensure that we meet our marketing objectives. They are descriptive, not prescriptive. And for that reason, I want to introduce you to the Strategic Quadrants framework. The Strategic Quadrants framework is based on 2 facts of life. Those are growth and revenue. They also recognize that the go-to-market strategies can be based on 2 variables or 2 dimensions in the matrix. Those are source of volume, which we will use as our growth estimate, and marketing objective, which we will use as our revenue objective. In order to know which of the categories we sit in on the first variable, source of volume, we need to answer two fundamental questions. The first question is, in which industry do we compete? The second question is, how can we increase volume, or from where can our volume come? The reason that we need to ask about the industry is because we need to identify who our true competition is. And those are any companies which have truly substitutable offerings and compete for the same customers. Now, this notion of industry is slightly different from what you might have heard about in other marketing classes. This is because oftentimes as marketers, we warn against the tendency for us to be myopic in our definition of our competition. We encourage instead for marketers to consider a broad view of competition, recognizing that any place that a person could spend their dollars could be a form of competition. However, in this case, in order to identify where our our volume can come from, we truly do need to know exactly which sources of competition have truly substitutable products and actually compete for the same customers. Now, if you're having trouble doing that, one way to identify your substitutable offerings is to consider a concept called the value equivalence line. The value equivalence line says that our substitutable offerings typically offer very similar benefits and value to the customer at a very similar price point. And so if we were to draw a graph that identified the level of features and benefits offered in a product category and then clustered the brands around different price points, we would be able to identify which of those brands were actually substitutable offerings. Once we know that, then we can answer the question of how we can increase volume, how we can meet this objective. And we have two options in the strategic quadrants framework. The first option is to stimulate demand. The second option is to steal demand. Now, we needed to understand what the industry was if we want to steal. So that literally means that we're going to try to steal customers from our competition. But what does it mean to stimulate demand? Well, here we need to think about the two types of demand. Demand can be primary demand or it can be secondary demand. Primary demand is demand for a product category. Secondary demand is demand for a specific brand. So if we're stimulating demand, it could be that we are stimulating demand for the product in general, and since we offer that product, we thereby are able to gain some of the market share. Or it could be that we are specifically trying to stimulate only demand for our brand, and that might be a type of retention strategy. The second variable in the strategic quadrants framework is marketing objective. So we're asking, what is the marketing objective that we seek to meet with our go-to-market strategy? And there are two choices. One is acquisition, the other is retention. So in other words, if we are following an acquisition strategy, that means that we are trying to acquire new customers, and we are going to generate our revenue from those new customers. If we are following a retention objective, that means that we are seeking to retain existing customers, but to continue to sell to them or to sell more to them. And typically, companies will have strategies going on simultaneously that both seek to acquire and seek to retain. Now, in knowing whether you are following a go-to-market strategy that is based on acquisition or retention, it is important for you to think about what it means to be a customer. A customer is someone who habitually patronizes the industry, and that's an important consideration. Notice that phrase exactly, habitual patronage. Sometimes in marketing, we'll say things like, the customer is always right. But we might even be talking about someone who has simply used our product but not purchased our product, or someone who has walked in our store but not actually bought anything. So in the Strategic Quadrants framework, we truly are trying to describe a customer as someone who has already been in the habit of purchasing from us. And if they are indeed a customer, then we seek to retain them. And if they are not, we seek to acquire them. Now, an example of this is me with Starbucks. I have purchased coffee from Starbucks before, but I don't consider myself a customer of Starbucks. That's because typically I would prefer to make my own beverages at home. And if I can identify a local tea shop or a local coffee shop with a local roaster, then I would prefer that over a big chain like Starbucks. So in a more traditional marketing sense, Starbucks might consider me a customer because I have given them some of my money. But in the Strategic Quadrants framework, Starbucks should really treat me not as a customer. They should seek to acquire me because I am not in the habit of going to their shops. This is what the Strategic Quadrants framework looks like. So again, we have a 2x2 matrix with source of volume on the on the Y, and the marketing objective on the Y axis. And you can see the way that we break apart these variables. So for source of volume, we can either stimulate demand or we can steal that demand. And for the marketing objective, we can either acquire new customers or we can retain our customers. And so this then gives us 4 go-to-market strategies: stimulate acquisition, stimulate retention, steal acquisition, or steal retention. Let's go through examples of each of these 4 go-to-market strategies. The first one is stimulate acquisition. So again, in this case, we are trying to stimulate product demand or demand for the product category in general. We may need to trigger the recognition in the target audience that they have a need for this product if we are seeking to stimulate the product category demand. And by definition then, since these are new to the category customers, they are also new to us, and so we are in acquisition mode, stimulate acquisition. The example I have on the slide is for a vaccine for the HPV virus. The vaccine is called Gardasil, and when the pharmaceutical company that created Gardasil first introduced this, it was the first ever, and I believe continues to be, the only HPV vaccine on the market. No one had ever had a vaccine for the HPV disease before, and so the marketing campaign needed to educate the target audience about the need to have a vaccine. The marketing campaign, therefore, was more about stimulating demand for the vaccine than it was about branding the product. Although the ads do very carefully mention Gardasil as the brand name as well, so that once this product is no longer protected by patents, then they will already have established a first-to-market strong brand name. The second go-to-market strategy is stimulate retain. Again, this means we are stimulating demand, but we're stimulating demand specifically for our brand rather than for the product category. And we are doing so among customers that we already have, people who are already habitual patrons of our brand. So we're seeking to retain them, but we also want to stimulate more demand. So how can we do that? Well, much like we talked about yesterday with the market opportunity matrix, we can do that in a few different ways. It could be that we augment our product so that people replace the product or buy more of the product. We could identify new uses for the product that we sell. We could lower the volume in our packages so that the customers have to buy more in order to get the same amount they used to buy. Or we could raise our price, or some combination of all of those. These are all possibilities for the stimulate retain strategy. On the slide, I have a picture of the Cheerios snack mix. This is an example of stimulate retain. Lots of families buy the cereal Cheerios, and if they have children, they might make little snack packs for the children to take in their lunch or to take in the car as a quick and healthy snack. So to stimulate retain, Cheerios created another product in the product line. It's still Cheerios, but now it's a Cheerios snack mix in its own special packaging. In so doing, they can now sell to these families both the box of Cheerios cereal and boxes of the Cheerios snack mix. Now, the one consideration in this type of strategy that you have to remember is that it is possible that you are cannibalizing sales of your other products with sales of the new product. So if you follow the product development model for Stimulate Retain, you do need to consider whether or not you will harm yourself through cannibalization. The third go-to-market strategy is steal acquire. So in this strategy, we are stealing our demand from our competition. And we're in the acquisition objective because those customers were not our customers, but were our competition's customers. So our category is steal acquisition. The example I have on the slide is from an insurance company in the United States called Geico. When Geico first entered the mass market about 20 years ago, it was one of the weakest insurance companies in terms of its market share. The two major companies for market share were Allstate and State Farm. And in fact, those two brands of insurance had more than 40% of the market share in the market. So even though there were several insurance companies, only two controlled most of the market. Geico went after Allstate and State Farm with a very aggressive steal acquisition campaign. All of its ads say something like, you can save 15% or more in 15 minutes or less by switching to Geico. And you can see this in the ad that I have on the slide. You even see the language switch to Geico in the ad, which tells the target audience very clearly that they want you to switch from your current brand of insurance to them. In other words, it's very clear that they're trying to steal the customers. If they were using a stimulate model, they might be going after people who just bought a house or just bought a car and have never had insurance before. Those are people who are just entering the market and need to have the product demand stimulated. But instead, Geico says they want to switch you to Geico, which is a steal strategy. The last go-to-market strategy is steal retain. And you might be asking, how is it possible that we're going to have this combination of steal retain? Because when we are retaining, we know that those are our current customers. But if we are stealing, then we know that those are the customers of our competition and we're trying to steal them away. So how could we have steal retain? Well, I like to think of this go-to-market strategy as a share strategy. It occurs whenever customers are loyal to multiple brands. So I have on the slide the example of Levi's. This is because, especially for women, we might have several brands of jeans. We might have Levi's, we might have Citizens of Humanity, we might have Lucky, we might have Diesel, and on and on. And we might like all of those, but which of those brands will get the next purchase that we have to make? And so if we are one of those brands of jeans, we say that we want to retain the business that we have from that customer, but we also want to steal more of that business from the other brands the customer likes. This is also a very common strategy in technology markets, or whenever people have an ecosystem of products, which oftentimes occurs in technology. For instance, when it comes to your computer, it may be that you have a certain brand of mouse and a certain brand of laptop and a certain brand of printer and maybe another monitor and maybe some other peripherals. Those could be all the same brand, or they might be from a mix of brands that you like. If you were to continue to add on to the ecosystem of your computer equipment, then any of those brands would seek to steal more of that demand from the other brands. So again, when we use the strategic quadrants framework, we are looking at what is our source of volume and will it come from stealing customers or stimulating demand? And what is our marketing objective? And will it come from acquiring new customers or retaining existing customers? If we are in Stimulate Acquisition, we are getting new product customers. If we are in Stimulate Retain, it's our current customers, and we're trying to get more volume or perhaps charge a higher price from them. If we're in Steal Acquire, those are new brand customers. Those are customers that already buy that product category but buy it from one of our competitors, and we want to steal them away. And if it's Steal Retain, then those customers are loyal to multiple brands, and we want more of that business. So in this lecture, you learned about several marketing strategy models, and most importantly, you learned about the Strategic Quadrants framework. So now you can meet me in the Facebook group where we will be discussing what go-to-market strategy African Toddy should use.